Hey everyone, thank you for joining me. Today you're going to learn how to create depth in your resin art using only one layer of resin. Of course, we're going to use our Pour Play Artist resin with a 1:1 ratio for this tutorial. I love this resin, and so do our customers. Right in time for Christmas, we're selling resin starter packs where you can create your own serving trays. My serving tray looks a little bit different to the ones that we're selling, but it'll give you the same sort of idea of what to do if you're a newbie and haven't done any resin work before. Okay, so as I said, we're using the epoxy resin 1:1 ratio, which means equal parts A and equal parts B. So you measure out, you use the resin calculator on our website, on the product listing. It will let you know how much resin to mix up. Okay, it depends on the size of your board, the size of your surface. So our resin starter packs come in 3 sizes, large, medium and small, so it depends how much you'd mix up. Okay, but use that calculator. It's very simple, just put in the dimensions of the board and it will tell you how much. Say if it says mix up 100 mils, mix up 110, just to make sure you've got enough to cover. You'd rather a little bit more than too little. Okay, and then you can always use the extra resin you have over for silicone molds or something else that's small as well. Okay, so here I'm just mixing up pouring the resin in. As I said, 50% is going to be A, which is the resin, and the other is going to be the B, which is the hardener. Okay, looks like I'm using the end of the resin in these bottles. Whenever you're measuring resin, it has to be absolutely spot on. You want to hit the nail on the head when you're measuring. Okay, a little bit too much of A or a little bit too much of B, your resin may never harden. So whenever you stir or mix resin, you want to stir slowly. By stirring slowly, you create less air bubbles. And I should have said at the start of the video, make sure you're wearing your proper PPE. If you're using the starter pack, we do include a mask, but if you want to take up resin on a regular basis, I highly recommend investing in a half-face respirator or a full-face respirator. And whenever you use resin, be sure to use it where you've got good airflow, not around your family members, and that includes pets. So you want a breeze to come through and replace the bad air, because resin does give off vapors. Okay, so you can do much more research on the internet when it comes to proper PPE, but make sure you have your essentials, including your nitrile gloves, which I'm wearing there, and your face mask. I'm also wearing a plastic apron just because I'm very clumsy, and once you get resin on your clothes, they're pretty much ruined, as it will harden and not look so good. So I'm just going slow here, stirring. Make sure you scrape the sides, and you can use our resin mixer that we sell. Normally I use it, but we've been moving the workshop around, so I just grabbed a craft stick to stir this resin. So I'll just speed this up, but make sure you mix for 3 minutes minimum to ensure that A and B is properly mixed. Okay, once your resin's been mixed properly, just sit it there, and while it sits, it will release some of the bubbles, so that's a good thing. But you want to get your colours together. So your mica powders, they come in the starter kit. If you're not using a starter kit, obviously you'll have mica powders. You may have inks, you may have dyes or pastes. Either way, you want to get your colours out and get them ready into plastic cups. Sometimes, depending on the size of the surface I'm using, I'll only use those shop cup size cups or the standard 280ml plastic cups as well. Okay, whatever cups you use, that's fine. I'm going to go today for a ocean theme. I'm not doing waves or anything, it's sort of a deep ocean I'm going for, so I'm using a navy blue. I'm going to use an electric blue, which is a much brighter blue, a turquoise, a light blue, and I think in this video I forget to use the light blue, but she's sitting down there at the bottom of the screen next to the navy blue packet of mica powder. Also going to add in some greens, just 2 variations of an emerald green. That will create that sort of deep sea kind of feel. I don't want to use colours that are similar to each other. That won't give the piece a lot of depth, but they'll all merge in and look like I've ended up only using 1 or 2 colours, when in fact I've used 5. So then we've got our mica powders into the cups. Try to only use less than 10% colour to the volume of resin. If you go over and use too much ratio of mica powder to resin, it may never cure. Okay, so be lenient in the amount of mica powder you're using, or paste or inks, whatever you may be using, particularly your inks. You certainly don't want to go over the 10% ratio when you're using any sort of liquid colour with resin, but mica powders, you don't want to unbalance the ratio. Okay, so be lenient on the amount of colour you use with them, and once it's in the tray you can sort of go, okay, yep, I think I needed a little bit darker, and you can pour some more resin on there. Okay, but go slowly with it, don't overdo it. And so I'm getting I think my darker navy blue colour in there, and then once that's done, I'll pour in that resin that I mixed, and I'll pour it across each of the colour cups. Sometimes I'll use a lot more of the navy blue because I want a darker background with a few different blues immersed in it. So I'm going to use a lot more navy blue than I would, say, the electric blue or the turquoise, the light blue, that sort of thing. Okay, and when you stir the mica powder in, you don't want to go too fast. That will create more bubbles for you to pop later with your heat gun. But you want to ensure any lumps and bumps from the powder are removed. But just take it, as I said before, take things slowly, take your time. The working time of this resin, I believe, is around the hour mark, but it depends on the temperature of the day. So I always come, if the resin says 60-minute working time, I always make sure I come well under that, just to make sure that I don't keep using it and it's about to cure. Okay, so I've got plenty of time to work with and not rush, which sometimes I do. Don't have a lot of patience, so you've got to have a lot of patience when it comes to resin art. So I'm just mixing those up slowly. Each one, make sure there's no lumps and bumps in them. And I'll just speed this up for you. Alrighty, so I'm going to choose my darkest colour, which is my navy blue. Make sure I've got no little hairs on the surface. Now normally I would pour lines, longer lines of the resin. You're simply pouring it straight out of the cup. But I want to immerse the colours a lot more than I normally do. So I don't want solid lines of, say, navy blue, then the electric blue, and then the lighter blue. So I'm only putting bits of colour here, there and everywhere around the board, as you'll see. So I'm going to do that for the navy blue, and then I'm going to grab the other colours and put them randomly wherever. So I'll speed through this process a little for you, but as you'll see, yep, colour goes a little bit here, a little bit there, and so I visually can see, okay, yep, this amount of resin is going to cover that surface, and I'll have plenty over, obviously. But just get your colours out of the cup, don't be afraid, pour them in slowly, and you'll be good to go. Okay, so now I've got my colours into the tray. I want to pop the air bubbles, because whenever you stir resin, you're going to get air bubbles. I can either use a small butane torch that I have. I have quite a few sizes of torches, but I'm going to get the heat gun. This is one of the larger ones. You don't want to put the nozzle of the heat gun directly on the resin, you'll burn it, and you always want to keep it moving to avoid burning the resin. We want to heat the resin up, we want to pop the air bubbles, but we don't want to scorch it. So you don't want to have the nozzle sitting right on it, and you don't want to have the heat on it for more than, say, 10-20 seconds. Okay? You can pick your tray up and move it around, tilt the resin so it moves around, fills up the entire bottom of the board. Because when you do heat the resin up, it thins it out, so it makes it much easier to flow across the surface. As you can see, those colours are sort of starting to mix together a little bit. But I've just got to take it slowly to make sure that the resin gets into the edges of the board. You could also, of course, use a stick, a craft stick, stirring stick, to move those to move the resin into the corners. I'm just taking it slowly by tilting. As I said, you can just use one of the flame lighters. It will heat up the resin, it will pop the air bubbles, but the heat guns do it a lot quicker, and I've got a bit more power behind them, particularly when I want movement in my piece. Just be careful not to get any resin on the edge of your board where you don't want it. If you do, grab a wipe and wipe it off straight away. So I'm trying to immerse the greens with the blues a little bit more. But as you saw, I gave the resin time to cool down a little bit without heat on it for a long time. You'll burn the resin pretty quickly by doing that. by not giving it a break from the heat. So I don't want those harsh lines. And by using these different sorts of colours, as in the greeny blues, the emerald greens, the darker blues, it's creating depth. Instead of using similar colours, 5 similar colours, it's not going to have much contrast. Okay, and as I said, the heat will thin it out. It will move it across the surface, it flows, and then it will settle. Now I've got my gold sitting there in the little shot cup there that I'm just pouring the resin into now. And that gold, if everything goes correctly, will sit on top of that resin resin art that I've just created there. Even though it's still runny, it's still obviously nowhere near dry or cured. I want that gold to look like it's sitting over the top. And you can do that by waiting for this layer to cure, the 24 hours, and then doing a clear coat with that gold over the top of it. But as I said before, I don't have the patience, so I want to put some gold over the top of this. So I've mixed it in, the gold. Make sure my tray is level. I know this table that I'm working on isn't. So I'm just going to leave it there for at least 10 to 15 minutes. And as I said, I know the working time of our resin, the Pour Play Artist resin. So I've got plenty of time. It's not a hot day. It's not going to cure quicker than I anticipate. So I'm going to go off and do another piece with the leftover resin with some silicone molds. And then I'm going to come back in about 10 to 15 minutes and then do the gold. As you can see, I'm back after doing the silicone molds. It's settled a little bit, my piece. Obviously it hasn't cured, it's only been 10 minutes. And I'm going to grab the gold that I stirred before, but I'm just going to give it a quick stir. It's been 10 minutes. I'll just stir it up. Now all of these products and supplies I'm using, we obviously sell at fluidartsupplies.com.au. You can pick them up online or in the store at Albion Park Rail. The gold I use, you only need a very tiny amount, and I'm still getting used to the amount I need because I tend to go full hog and use too much gold and it sort of covers the layer below it. So this time I don't do too bad on it, but you can use even a smaller amount just for that sort of rich kind of embellishment of the gold over the top. Up to you how much gold you want to use, but the gold I'm using, it's called a marble colour. And so I'm just going to use the craft stick and put out little lines of the gold where I want it. Because as I said, I'm trying to lessen the amount I use each time. So the gold doesn't 100% take over the whole piece. I do want people to be able to see the blue underneath and the green. But because I've let the piece set for a few minutes, the resin is cooled off a little. Okay, that means that when I do this with the gold, and then I'm going to heat the gold up obviously with the heat gun, the gold's not going to immerse in the blues and the greens. If I'd done it straight away when I was doing the blues and greens, if I'd put the gold in then, more than likely it would have immersed as another colour in there. But as I said, I want to create depth here, so I waited the 10-15 minutes and came back to it. And that gives the resin a bit of time just to cool, not cure. You obviously don't want to wait so long that it starts curing. Okay, so I've got just a couple of lines there, and I'll get the heat gun, and then by heating it up, obviously it thins out the resin a little bit to make it flow. And that particular gold that I like using, it's just brilliant for its richness. It's just so rich, really metallic. So I just give it a bit of a helping hand with the heat gun to disperse itself. Again, I don't want to overdo it because, as you'll see, the resin sort of not necessarily expands, but moves, and then it will come back a little bit. See how it moves around, and then it's sort of, okay, where am I going to settle, kind of thing. Alright, so I want to get it moving, get it to spread out so it's not those harsh lines that I put out on it. I want it to sort of to drag across the surface. So with the heat gun, and always on high, but obviously I'm not right on the resin there. I don't want to cook the resin. And I give one area a bit of a chance to cool down, and then I'll go work on another area of the resin, just to spread it out a little. Depending on your heat gun, you may be using it on slow. All heat guns are generally different, but for some things I use it on slow, and others, majority of the time, sorry, I use it on high. But I'm very careful not to not overdo it and burn it. Okay, so there I've got it sitting on top, and it will settle itself down, so it's not going to look exactly like that. And now I'm thinking, okay, well, I may need a little bit more gold in that top right corner, so I certainly can add it in. I'm just going to give you a bit of a closer look to see how that sits in. And it sort of looks like a corally reef. It's got a corally reef kind of look to it, doesn't it? And that gold sort of just adds a little bit of elegance to it. You can use silver, you can use bronze, you can use rose gold, whatever sort of metallics you like. With this particular brand, I really love. So I just want a little bit of gold in that corner to balance it out. And I'll just use the heat gun to disperse it and get it activated there. As some of you may not know, resin is self-leveling, so it will do its thing, level out, but make sure your surface, your table and all that is level, or you're going to have one end's going to be higher than the other with resin. Okay, you want to keep it still. We sell resin tents, which are essentially food tents. We put it, you can put it over the top, and then no dust, dog hair, cat hair will get into it. That's always a good thing. But leave it as is. Make sure you don't touch it for at least 24 hours. And here are the final results. Thank you for joining us with this tutorial, and be sure to get your supplies from fluidartsuppliers.com.au. Thank you.